What's good, y'all? It's your boy Sean Peter Blunt God. Hey! And we are back with another One Piece reaction. And today, YouTube content creator DaksSake, someone I was recently introduced to. This video was suggested to me on the Discord. So make sure y'all go follow or go join the Discord, especially if you want me to react to some One Piece videos. Definitely go join the Discord. But DaksSake is going to tell us that he obviously solved what the One Piece is. So he's going to tell us what the One Piece is today. So we're going to find out, right? We're going to find out. The title of this video is I Think I Just Solved the One Piece and Oda is a Madman. But before we get into the video, make sure you guys hit that like button. Also, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Make sure you comment your thoughts on the video, your opinion on my reaction, and all that. Make sure you comment down below. Also, make sure you follow me on Twitch if you want to catch these live streams live, and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And make sure you join the Discord, especially if you want to send me content to react to. So, today, Dak says he has found, he solved the One Piece. Now, we have watched a few videos about what the One Piece is. You know, there is one theory out there that the One Piece is sake, right? Because sake is known to unite people, especially in the world of One Piece. Every time a new member of the crew join, they share sake, or when there's an alliance, sake is shared, or after a party, they party, drink, or whatever, sake is shared. I think another theory was something about, well, it wasn't necessarily what the One Piece is, but I think it might be the same video with the sake, but it's about, you know, the overall goal is Luffy's ultimate dream is to have the world's biggest party. But that kind of, I think that goes along with the whole sake thing, right? You have, if Luffy's dream is to have the world's biggest party, you would have sake there, right? Because people love to drink in One Piece. Makes sense. But it's, you know, it's a lot of theories of what the One Piece is. One of my theories is that it might be like a big gold poneglyph or something with like all the history in the world in one place, right? And not only that, it has the directions, or it has the plan to unite the world, right? Like, because I believe that One Piece, the story of One Piece is about uniting people, bringing people together, right? Luffy is that person to bring people together. We've seen him do that time and time again throughout the story. You know, bring different races of people despite the discrimination that goes on in the world. And one thing we see in One Piece is that the world is very much divided. And when I say that, I do mean figuratively, like, you know, different races, or, you know, through discrimination and everything. But I also mean it's literally physically divided. You know, you have the red line that splits the world, and you have these 4 different seas, you know, the East Blue, the West Blue, the North Blue, the South Blue. They're all divided. Like, you know, it's, in order to get to one blue to another, you have to get over the red line or go through the Grand Line. And you also have the Grand Line and the Calm Belts, which make it very hard to travel, right? And one thing that the story it implies, or it shows, is freedom, right? Freedom. That's Luffy's ultimate goal. He says the Pirate King is the person with the most freedom on the sea. How can you have the most freedom if the world is divided and you can't get to one sea to another without jumping through obstacles, right? Not saying it's not impossible. You know, obviously we know that Shanks has traveled from the New World to the East Blue, you know what I'm saying? So there's a way to do it, but it's not easy. You know, it's not something you could do effortlessly. So I believe one thing that has to be done by the end of the series is that the red line has to be destroyed, right? And what that accomplishes, it makes the world easily to access, right? It makes every sea easier to access. You know, completing Luffy's dream to be this ultimate freedom, Sanji's dream of the all blue, because you have every blue eventually connecting, which creates the all blue. You know what I mean? Especially where the red line is. If you destroy it where like Reverse Mountain is, and the part where I guess Fishman Island is, you know, that part, which also plays into the prophecy that Luffy is going to destroy Fishman Island. Because if he destroys the red line above it, it will indirectly destroy Fishman Island. Because I don't believe Luffy is going to directly, I don't think he's going to like try to destroy Fishman Island on purpose. It's going to be something that's a byproduct of a different action, you know? So, you know, that's kind of my theory. And I think the One Piece, you know, the overall, the One Piece is something that's going to be like the plan of destroying the red line. That's part of why Roger was too early, because when he found the One Piece, which let's say it is this plan, he didn't have all the tools in order to act through the plan that the overall One Piece said, right? And I'm just kind of spitballing right now. But yeah, so what are the tools that you need to destroy the One Piece, or to complete that project, right? You need the ancient weapons. You know, Poseidon wasn't born yet. You know what I'm saying? Now, I think each tool has a different purpose. Not all of them are meant to destroy the red line, but overall, they're meant to unite the world into one piece. You know what I mean? That's kind of my speculation on what I believe what the One Piece is. And I'm not here to just say that's my overall theory, but that's the theory that I do believe. You know, I'm pretty sure that might have been said before, but I can't think off the top who said it. You know what I'm saying? But that's what I believe it is. Let's get into the video. It is a bit of a long video, so I do want to get into this video. Again, this video is from DaksSake. The link to it will be in the description box. Let's go.
For more than 25 years and counting, fans have been wondering, what is the One Piece? Or maybe, where is the One Piece? And an equally important question might just be, why is the One Piece? What treasure could possibly make the Pirate King himself laugh to the point of tears? But also be one that could potentially bring the entire world government to its knees. Is it a weapon, or just some type of long-running joke? Well, what if I told you that the One Piece is the physical key that allows Luffy to make the world into what it should be? A symbol of the world after the dawn, you could say. And what if I said that our very own singing skeleton may just tell us everything that we need to know about Joy Boy's history? Well, please join me as I walk you through what, where, and why.
I like where he's going, because he's kind of following the same logic that I believe when he's talking about bringing the world to what it's supposed to be, right? It just makes sense. So yeah, I kind of like where he's going, and the fact that he's bringing up Brook, the whole song DaksSake. You know, that's been talked about. That's been talked about often. So yeah, the old DaksSake being like having some history in it. So yeah.
Why is the One Piece? But first, please help your boy out and drop a like on the video. This is definitely the biggest project that I've ever done, and I know you're going to at least walk away knowing something new. So if you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe, because I got a lot more coming. On to the mega theory.
Yeah.
Of all the mysteries in the world of One Piece, the ones that have intrigued me the most since my very first episode are that of the pirates. How has only one pirate successfully conquered the seas and found that final treasure in 800 years? What could Roger possibly find and leave behind at that place that made him want to begin the great pirate era after his execution? We learned from Inuyasha that Laugh Tale can only be found by reading all 4 lode poneglyphs, and he made it seem as if these 4 poneglyphs will act as coordinates to a certain point on the map. But how could a stationary island possibly remain hidden for this long? Does it move periodically or potentially just reside under the sea? Well, I think I've actually managed to find the answers to all of those questions thanks to a number of people that chipped in that I'll try to mention during the video, as well as taking my time researching all of Oda's smallest hints to Joy Boy, because we all know how Oda loves to twist past moments in the story, no matter how small, to amplify the current events that we're reading.
Yeah, I believe that why it's like not a normal island. I don't believe it to be a normal island. I believe that it's an island that or it's an island that's somewhere that is hard to access. You know what I'm saying? That's why I kind of liked, I think it was O'Hara, he had a video about Laugh Tale being under in this lobby. That makes a lot of sense. You know, I kind of reacted to another theory about Pluton that kind of changed my mind on how in this lobby came to be. Y'all make sure y'all go check that out. I just dropped it. I recently dropped it. One of my last reaction videos I dropped. But that would make sense. Why it's so hard to access? Why you can't just go to Laugh Tale? You know, because I feel as though if it was just a normal island, somebody would have came across it on accident at the very least. So it has to be an island that has like a difficult barrier of entry. Like maybe it's in the sky. Maybe you have to get to it like by like a knock-up stream or something, like a special knock-up stream. Maybe it's under like the under sea level or something in this lobby, right? Maybe it's on the moon. I don't know, but it's like I don't think Laugh Tale is an easily accessible island, and I think that's why it's not like somebody just comes across it on accident, you know? Because if it was just a normal island, somebody would have had to come across it. Somebody, even if it's just accident.
Sometimes he does this with entire arcs, like Saba Odi, where we returned after 2 years and essentially had the same exact setup, but the outcome was inverted to show our crew's strength over those last 2 years. But Oda also does this with smaller singular moments as well, such as Sun God Nika. The first image we saw of Nika connects to this image of Luffy and Skypiea, which is a cool panel in its own right, and despite being one of Oda's favorite panels that he's ever drawn, nobody could have predicted all of its ties to Gear 5th and Nika himself at the time that it was printed. However, once that connection was made in chapter 1017 and 1044, it recontextualized a lot of what we saw in Skypiea.
Hey, also, I also want to say this. If you go back to Fishman Island, there was a moment where it was, I guess, the big party. I want to say it was Fishman Island. It was like the big party afterwards, and Brook had that same moment where, you know, his you could see his silhouette in the with the moon in the back, and his silhouette looks just like the whole Sun God Nika pose as well. Hey, you know, y'all got, I'm gonna probably put, when I edit this stream, I'm gonna put it somewhere so y'all can see it. But yeah, dope moment. So I'm kind of thinking, why would Oda do that for Brook? Why would Oda do that for Brook? Does Brook have a bigger purpose in the series than we think, you know?
And has given rise to all sorts of new theories and parallels. This is an example of how something seemingly insignificant in the past can become significant thanks to future events. So I wanted to use that logic and go back through the story with a fine-tooth comb and find more hidden connections to Joy Boy, Nika, and Luffy that have yet to be discovered. I mean, we've already had one slip under our...
And let me know if y'all know that reference for that, what that movie was, that movie was where he had the combs like in the desert. Let me know if you know that reference. What movie that's from.
nose with Luffy's pose in Skypiea. So where else can Oda be hiding hints for the greatest secrets of the One Piece world? And wouldn't you know it, we actually missed another example of that same exact Nika pose, except this time it was by Brook. This was back in chapter 635, and you can even see one of the fishmen smile at his performance. And we now know that making others smile is something that Nika did in the past. This is
I guess I don't have to put it in the video. But yeah, that's exactly the pose I was talking about with Brook, with the moonlight. Looked just like Sun God Nika.
An extremely important panel, and I promise I'm going to circle back to it later. But I think it would instead be best to begin our discussion with the most important common denominator between Joy Boy, Nika, and Luffy, which is the Gomu Gomu no Mi. And yes, I'll be calling it by that name throughout the video because A, it's easier, and B, it actually is just the Gomu Gomu no Mi. And you can check out these two videos in the description to learn why. But obviously, Luffy, Joy Boy, and Nika all use the powers of this fruit, and thanks to the context of what Roger said at Laugh Tale, Joy Boy is tied to Laugh Tale directly and is probably even the one who left the One Piece behind. So I figured that anything dealing with this fruit has to be put under a magnifying glass. So from here on out, I want to look at every potential tie to the Gomu Gomu no Mi in the story that I could find, and then kind of consider it in light of the new powers that we now know that it has. And what I found will surprise you. And at the bare minimum, you will not be able to look at another Laugh Tale theory the same after today. I think we can all agree that Laugh Tale and the Imperative Final War will be some of the most significant moments in the entire story of One Piece. I mean, that's what we've been building up for over 25 years now. So let me throw this idea at you. What if Oda hid all of his hints for the most significant arc inside the most insignificant one? At least in many people's eyes, which is Long Ring Longland.
The answer is hell no.
Now, before you question everything and leave the video...
Yeah, I've definitely, heard people talk about that arc and how it could be significant to greater things, especially after the introduction to Gear 5th, because we learned that Gear 5th, you could stretch other things, make other things elastic as well. And a lot of people talk about how, because in Long Ring Longland, or however you say it, we've seen animals that were like stretched out and they were able to grow. I think there was an explanation that they were able to grow freely without anything affecting it or influence, without any external influences. And that's why the animals were the way they were. So I've heard that maybe Nika or Joy Boy had some level of involvement in that island, and that's why a lot of the animals are like that. Plus, I think Luffy even mentions that that's his freest form, being like Gear 5th is his freest form. Hence, that's why it's his most powerful form, because it's his freest form. So, and just kind of going back to the reference to the long land or whatever, Long Ring Longland or whatever. That's how the animals were free, and that's why they were able to grow, get so long and everything. So, is a bit of a connection there.
Video, let me show you one unquestionably convincing piece of evidence, just so you know I'm not full of shit. And that would be this panel. The old man, named Tanjit, explains that the reason everything is stretched out is because they feel free, so they can stretch longer and taller than normal. Doesn't that sound familiar to you? Even if this is the first time you've been acquainted with this panel, you could probably see how important that line is right away. Because being free is exactly how Luffy's powers work. Once he awakens, he even becomes freer than normal and is only limited by imagination. And we even had a reminder about this freedom in chapter 1061, where Luffy says that Gear 5th is when he's truly free. So how in the world can everyone and everything on Long Ring Longland become stretched out for a similar reason to Luffy? Well, that question is what led me to find all the answers that I'm sharing with you today. So now that you know I might actually be onto something, let me go ahead and start back from the top. Long Ring Long Land is viewed as almost a throwaway arc by many, partially due to it being stuck between the highs of Skypiea and Water 7, but also
I used to like before I actually followed the manga, I thought it was a filler arc, you know, like cuz I didn't really start following the manga to Dressrosa. So, I used to think it was just a filler arc. I didn't know it was an actual canon arc, you know.
partially due to our Davy back fight against the very lame Foxy pirates. The only real plot progression occurred at the end when we met Aokiji. It's almost like Oda was just having fun, and that leads many people to disregard this arc or simply skip over it in terms of the overarching story. You could almost say that it has been hidden from us in a sense, which is...
And I don't think it was too insignificant because it did introduce the Davy back fights, which could be somewhat important for the future of the story still, because we also learn about Rocks D. Zebek, and we know that, well, we don't really know how he was able to get so many strong pirates on his crew, but one of the theories is he could have got them through a Davy back fight. So if that's the case, you know, that's something that's important, right? The Davy back fight, especially with Rocks D. Zebek, if that theory is indeed real, right? If that's how he got all these strong characters on his crew. That whole concept of the Davy back fight was introduced in this arc, the Long Ring Long Land arc. So, you know, it does give us a bit of gems, right? It has given us a bit of gems. And the Davy back fight could still kind of play some importance in the future of the story. Could. Maybe we'll see Foxy again. I don't know.
Doubly interesting when you consider that the island itself is almost completely hidden away from the world. The first reason is simply its structure. It's made of about 10 points around a circle that are all connected under the water, which right away hides about 95% of it. And each of those points is a boring, empty plain. When the Straw Hats first arrived, only Luffy was interested in even exploring it, and I'll definitely discuss that point more later on. But this is yet another reason why it's kind of hidden. I mean, why would anyone bother exploring it at all if there's just nothing to do or nothing to steal? And on top of that, a log pose will only point you to one of the 10 points before directing you away to somewhere else completely, because it's actually all just one big island hidden mostly under the sea. Again, another way in which this island stays hidden from the world. And as many of us remember, once a year during Agua Laguna, the island becomes a full crown shape again, which allows the villagers to travel to another point on foot. So overall, this basically just means that if you did find this island, all you'd see is a boring empty plain and then get directed away from it. And the only time that someone could see the rest of the island under the sea is during Agua Laguna. And we were basically told that no ship could possibly sail during it. Only the sea train. And isn't it kind of weird how perfectly crown-shaped it is? And I'll get back to this later, because once the crew walks around and sees that everything and everyone is stretched out, we even see Chopper and Usopp begin to stretch out too. And they even ask, what kind of island is this? Since people seem to be affected by the freedom of this island even right after they arrive there, maybe there's something going on with the environment itself that causes this phenomenon. I mean, we've seen Logia awakenings affect environments permanently, and sure, the Gomu Gomu isn't a Logia, but it already has properties of both paramecias and zones, and it can at least affect environments temporarily. So I feel like I'd just be a fool to rule out the chance that the fruit can affect environments on a permanent basis as well. I mean, one look at Zunisha's legs also begs into question if those were stretched out also, but we'll definitely talk about that more later too. And since the last user of the Gomu Gomu seemed to be Joy Boy, it would all probably have to be Joy Boy that did this if this was the case. And that idea gets even more mind-blowing when you see this comment from Tanjiro. As soon as Luffy knocks him down from the stilts, he looks directly at Luffy and without hesitation he says, "Long time no see." And after a reminder from Usopp, he says, "Oh yeah, I haven't seen your face." Maybe I'm reaching way too deep here, but could he possibly just be mistaking Luffy for Joy Boy? As if he could tell he had some will of Joy Boy, or at least he was...
Then that would mean that this guy has been alive for a long time, right? Like, I mean, now this theory kind of got me a little more interested about this island, right? Like the whole Long Ring, Long Land, because like I gotta go back and reread this arc. I gotta go back and reread this arc because I watched it on the anime, but I want to go back and reread it. So yeah, I might have to, because there might be some gems that I definitely have missed, because he's actually showing some good gems, and I remember people referencing this arc after the whole Gear 5th reveal about the whole the animals being long. So I've heard theories about like maybe Nika or Joy Boy going to this island and stretching these animals out or something. I don't know, but it got my attention. First you had my curiosity, now you have my attention.
Free just like him, which led to him getting confused. If that seems like a stretch, keep in mind that Oda's depiction of Davy Jones looks exactly like this old man Tanjit. Davy was an infamous pirate from ancient times that was involved with the first Davy back fight on Hachinosu Island, so I don't think that we can rule out anything that this old man is talking about. We will discuss this in greater detail later in the video, but I just want to keep hammering home all these odd connections that point us right back to Long Ring Long Land. And one connection that connects this island to Laugh Tale directly happens during chapter 304, when we first arrive to Long Ring Long Land. Usopp famously gets "I'll die if I go to that island" disease, and the only other person that's gotten this disease in the story was Buggy right before he got to Laugh Tale. Could this possibly mean that they were near the same place when they got this disease? It could be that some people just get sick when near a certain area, or near a certain something. And something that I haven't seen a lot of people bring up is that we've seen something similar to this with Roger and Odin, as well as Luffy and Momo, when all of these people went to Zou. All four of them felt a little queasy when near the island, and they were the only ones from their respective crews to feel that way. Kind of like how Usopp and Buggy were the only ones to feel that way near their respective islands. And if you think about it, Usopp and Buggy are kind of similar in a lot of ways. They're cowards, but are also captains, right? So am I then proposing that Laugh Tale is at or near Long Ring Long Land? Well, that's honestly a strong possibility. But what I can say for sure is that there has to be some...
I mean, thinking about it, right? Thinking about it. Long Ring Long Land. Like that, this was after the In This Lobby Water 7 arc, right? So that would mean that Long Ring Long Land is close to Enies Lobby, right? Not that far from Enies Lobby. And let's say he's right. Let's say Long Ring Long Land is indeed close to Laugh Tale. We also know that it's close to Enies Lobby as well. I mean, there's a theory about Enies Lobby being where Laugh Tale is. Or, Laugh Tale being under that waterfall. I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying, I'm not saying it, but I'm saying it. I'm not saying it, but I'm saying it. Now, let me stop. But, I'm saying, like, there could be something to, if, let's say, Long Leg Land or whatever is indeed close to Laugh Tale, and we know that Long Ring Long Land is close to Enies Lobby, seeing how it was like the I guess the next arc after Enies Lobby and Water 7 arc, right after they left Water 7. I'm just saying, because why if Laugh Tale is under Enies Lobby, that would explain why it's so hard to get the Laugh Tale and why nobody has ever just came across Laugh Tale. Just saying.
Some type of connection between the two, or at least Long Ring Long Land and Joy Boy. And remember what I said earlier about Long Ring Long Land being crown shaped one day out of the year? Well, who else wears crowns? Kings, like the Pirate King. Maybe that's a sign that Agua Laguna is the one day a year that the Pirate King can be crowned. There was even an anime-only episode that told us that the water from Agua Laguna has salt from the All Blue, and that water is from Long Ring Longland. I mean, I know it's technically not canon, but like, why are they so specific? There is another idea that I like that even goes a step further that I'll go ahead and share later on in the video, but there is honestly a very strong case to be made that Laugh-Tale is right here at the center of all 10 points of Long Ring Longland. And it's an especially strong candidate if you assume that Laugh-Tale is stationary and is actually found at 4 intersecting points, just like Inuyarashi mentioned. So for those reasons, let me go ahead and briefly paint you a picture of what Laugh-Tale being at Long Ring Longland could look like. So for argument's sake, let's just say that the entrance to Laugh-Tale is inside the crown and is only accessible during low tide, aka Agua Laguna. So right off the bat, you'd need to go there on one specific day out of the year. And since log poses don't work there, you'd have to have a map with directions. You'd also have to kind of be there ahead of time because once the tide's lower, you wouldn't even be able to enter into inside the crown because there will be walls there at that point. You could almost say that those walls are acting as a border, not unlike the borders of Wano. And wait, didn't Wano have something underneath it too? An ancient city with poneglyphs and even an ancient weapon? I mean, Long Ring Longland is basically the same thing except under the water and crown shape. I mean, it would be a perfect place to hide treasure though, because who would ever bother to stay in the center of this boring ring of islands during the craziest storm of the year and try to navigate without log poses helping you? It's almost like you just have to know specifically when and where to be to ever have a chance of finding it. And if you think Laugh-Tale being hidden under an island isn't a good enough hiding spot, where has Pluton been this whole time? I mean, we didn't have specifics about Kaido's plans really, but he was there for 20 years and still didn't find Pluton. I mean, maybe he knew it was there, but he didn't actually get it, right? And it stayed hidden from everyone else for 800 years. So what's stopping Laugh-Tale from just being under a boring island that nobody cares about? And given Long Ring Longland's peculiar shape and the freedom that they all feel, wouldn't it make sense that Joy Boy stretched this island out using his awakening? Maybe he set all of this up himself because he was already familiar with Agua Laguna's tides, and he probably just figured that this would be a perfect place to hide the treasure until he returned in the future. And that idea actually gets a lot crazier when you consider the fact that Water 7 is very close by, and it also has an ancient city beneath it that is also underwater, just like Long Ring Longland. And we know that this city, as well as Water 7 itself, has been gradually sinking because of the floods of Agua Laguna. But think about that. Why would an ancient city even build themselves somewhere with intense floods in the first place? Unless at one point in time, there weren't any floods at all. However, if one day that all changed, then it would easily explain how both islands became mostly, or just entirely, submerged over time. And also why Joy Boy may...
I wonder what would have sank them, you know, like what would have caused that, you know, caused the water to rise to where it over flooded these cities, right? Where they had to end up building on top. Could it be like an ancient weapon possibly? You know? Uranus possibly? Even though, you know, we kind of got a glimpse of what Uranus is. And if that is the overall function of Uranus, maybe not, because Uranus seems like it's just something that destroys, but maybe Uranus has multiple purposes, you know, or maybe, you know, there's something that the world government has that can manipulate sea levels. I don't know.
May have wanted to stretch out parts of Long Ring Longland so that the people who live there wouldn't drown. But that isn't all, because there's also good reason to believe that this city is the one with the poneglyph that describes Uranus's location. I have so much more to say about this, but I'm just going to keep it brief for this video. So during Roger's flashback, Water 7 was the first place that he stopped while searching for that last lode poneglyph, and collecting all of the other poneglyphs as well. But it's the only place that we didn't see them actually interact with one. And at this point of his journey, Roger was rushing to become Pirate King before his death. So I don't think he was just stopping by just so he could say hi to Tom. Roger probably knew that there was history there and he wanted Odin to read it for him, even if it didn't end up being a lode poneglyph. I mean, they did the same exact thing in Skypiea too. The only place they went to that we didn't get to see a poneglyph was Water 7. And we already know that the other two ancient weapons locations were revealed by poneglyphs that were found in ancient cities without a lode poneglyph, being Skypiea and Alabasta, which makes Water 7 the perfect location to hold the location of the final ancient weapon, Uranus, since we know that the final lode poneglyph was found in Fishman Island instead.
I mean, a poneglyph in Water 7. That could be the case. That could be the case. You know, I never really thought about that. Kind of makes sense a little bit.
I mean, we all know that Uranus has close ties to the sky, and many people have theorized that it could have something to do with the tides just like the moon does. And if this poneglyph is really found in the same place that becomes flooded by Agua Laguna, well, you can probably already see where I'm going with this. What if Long Ring Longland in Water 7 used to avoid the floods in the past thanks to something managing the tides for them? Just like Poseidon was meant to help the people of Fishman Island, could Uranus have been used to help the people of Water 7? And maybe they were meant to fix the tides for good at some point, but much like Poseidon, Joy Boy was unable to fulfill that promise until 800 years in the future. Once the Void Century happened, Joy Boy may have just known that those annual tides were going to return, so he used them to his advantage to create the perfect hiding place for his grandest treasure, and the effects still make those inhabitants feel free to this very day. And so while that option is an extremely strong one, I want to pivot to a different idea for Laugh-Tale that I like just a little bit more, and that is that Laugh-Tale is located inside of a whale. This idea is not something new, so I'll only cover it briefly, but I do want to say that even if...
Yeah, I think I heard that one. I think I heard the theory, or I heard a theory about Laugh-Tale being inside of a moon or a whale, right? I kind of like the theory though about whales, where it's like they help you go towards the right location. They're more like used for navigation type stuff. Like I forgot who I seen that made that theory about whales being kind of like a compass, where whenever there's a whale, that means you're going in the right direction. Kind of, and just to kind of summarize the point, you know, or give one of the points to that theory. When we arrived in the Grand Line and we went over Reverse Mountain from the East Blue, when the Straw Hats did, right? The first thing we seen was Laboon, a whale, right? That's what pretty much welcomed the Straw Hats into the Grand Line, you know. And then fast forward to Saba or Fishman Island, right? When the Straw Hats left Fishman Island and they arrived in the New World, what do we meet? What was the first thing that welcomed the Straw Hats to the New World? It was a school of whales, just like Laboon, right? So it's like every time we enter a new world, I guess, a new area, and we're getting closer to finding that One Piece, there's always a whale present or something, you know what I'm saying? So that was kind of an oversimplification of the theory, because there's more to that theory. I want to say it was either Wizard of Oz or Marshall D. Preach that might have made that theory. I could be wrong. Let me know in the chat or let me know in the comments for anybody who do know where that theory comes from. Yeah, let me know in the comments, because I can't remember. I know I reacted to a theory about that before, and I wanted to say that.
If the One Piece is found under Long Ring Longland or elsewhere, there is still likely a very important whale waiting for Joy Boy to return, and that whale's name is Davy Jones. After all the connections between Long Ring Longland, Joy Boy, and Laugh Tale that I've said so far, I hope you can agree that anything that ties to that arc has to be put under a magnifying glass. And since we were introduced to Davy backfights here, which ties directly into Davy Jones, I want to take a deeper dive into this legend as well. And Oda actually discussed Davy in SBS 38, and even drew this picture of him that I mentioned earlier. Doesn't he look identical to Tanjit? We've seen Oda characterize things before, such as swords, which looked somewhat like their creators. And while I definitely don't think Tanjit himself created Davy or anything, I think it can at least prove that Davy has some kind of tie to Long Ring Longland, which we now know has some very strange ties to Joy Boy and potentially even Laugh Tale. And so I'll get right back to that point in a moment, but first
You know something? Because he keeps bringing up Davy Jones and Davy Beck, right? We know one thing we know, right, is it's something that I think is missing, right? Or not missing, but it's like overlooked, right? Davy Jones, if I remember correctly, because I could be wrong. Let me look it up. But Davy Jones, I'm gonna look it up as I talk. Davy Jones is the name of the ship that we see when we go to Fishman Island and we meet the character Vanderdecken, right? He has a ship called Davy Jones, which was the ship of his ancestor, Vanderdecken 1. You know, or Davy. It was Vanderdecken. He was like the first Vanderdecken who was a human that went to Fishman Island looking for a grand treasure. Possibly the One Piece, we don't know, but he was looking for a grand treasure. And his ship was named Davy Jones. So it's like, let's say Vanderdecken the First was actually looking for the One Piece. Why was he going to the bottom of the ocean looking for it? You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna let it play, but I'm gonna look for it though. I'm gonna look for it.
I feel like I need to briefly cover the reasoning why Laugh Tale could be inside of a whale for all those who might be uninitiated. So first off, a whale would just be the
Never mind, it was the Flying Dutchman, not Davy Jones. But the Flying Dutchman, I think, is the name of the ship that Davy Jones would ride. You know, it's like Davy Jones' ship. I could be wrong. Like, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not that knowledgeable on pirate lore and all that.
Perfect hiding place for an island. It would always be under the sea and moving, so it's basically its own natural defense mechanism. And if the whale is anything like Laboon, it could even fight off people on its own. And speaking of Laboon, he is literally a whale with an island inside, so we know it's possible to do so. And his species is literally known as island whales. Plus, he is a whale that befriended somebody who died, came back to life, and is supposed to come back and meet him. And we now know that Joy Boy died and came back to life in the form of Luffy. Plus, Crocus has been the Laugh Tale, and he's the one who modified Laboon in the first place. So maybe that's where he got the idea. And during our time under the sea in Fishman Island, we came across other island whales that even had the same scars as Laboon. Brook actually sang DaksSake to them and they had a pleasant reaction, almost as if they recognized the song. So how could that be? Shanks and Roger also sang that song with their respective crews. So this makes the island whales that much more ominous to me. So those are some of the most prominent reasons that I've seen for why many people believe Laugh Tale could be inside of a whale, but I think there's a hell of a lot more to it than that. And let's also just consider the fact that, as I was saying earlier, Brook's story is all about a guy who befriended a whale, died, and came back to life with the goal of meeting his whale friend again and playing that song. So what if Joy Boy is just a grander version of that story? I mean, we've already seen Joy Boy die and then come back in the form of Luffy, and just like how Laboon will only recognize Brook because of his afro, Zunisha only recognized Joy Boy after Luffy activated Gear 5th. I mean, all we really need is for the poneglyphs to point to another whale at the end of the journey to complete the parallel. And take a look at the freaking panel panel from Fishman Island that I mentioned before.
facts.
Brook is basically in the Nika pose, and we even see him making someone smile, which was even mentioned by the Gorosei when discussing Nika's power. Am I proposing that Brook has some deeper connection to Joy Boy? Basically, but I'll touch on that more later. And keep in mind that Luffy has wanted a musician more than any.
I think it's possible though. Like Brook, like come on, like Brook has to he has to know more than he's really giving us, because the man's been around a long time. He's been around before Roger, if I can remember. Like he lived before Roger was around. So like he has to have come across some type of, like he has to know something. You know, maybe he hasn't given us what he know because nobody ever asked, or he's never really, like, what he know, like whatever he does know, he may not have like had a reason to tell us about it. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe when the topic arises and it's like he has some relevant information on whatever they're talking about, he might give it to us, and it might be some very important information, but maybe he just hasn't found a reason to give us that information yet. You know, like maybe there hasn't been a reason for him to say whatever he does know. But I think Brook has to know something. He has to know something.
Other position since he set out as a pirate. And given Bink Sake's importance to the story, I think this could easily all tie together. I mean, Brook's laugh is literally in the song, for crying out loud. And let's not forget to mention that all Laboon, and all the other island whales apparently, wanted to do was destroy the Red Line. But Luffy stopped him until he returned at the end of his journey. And many people have already theorized that destroying the Red Line is the entire point of the One Piece. And that is exactly where Davy Jones himself comes into play. So that means it's time to discuss.
Hey, I'm glad he said it. I'm glad he said it, because I am definitely one of those people that believe that the Red Line, the ultimate, the end goal of the series, and I'm not saying it's Luffy's end goal per se, but the end goal as far as Luffy achieving what he wants, he has to destroy the Red Line at the end of the day in order to achieve what he wants. And I think what we're going to find at Laugh Tale, what we're going to find as what the One Piece is, and again, I think the One Piece could be multiple things. You know, it could be like some treasure, it could be some poneglyphs with like the real history of the world, like the like solid, like what actually happened. You know what I'm saying? It could be some of that. But then it could also be something as long as saying like, here's what needs to happen. You know what I'm saying? We got these 3 ancient weapons. Pluton is meant to destroy the Red Line. Poseidon is meant to, I don't know, like what would you do with sea kings that can maybe save people? I don't know, like save people from the flood or whatever. I don't know. I'm just spitballing. Uranus's purpose is to, or maybe Poseidon is for the sea kings to carry Noah to the surface and save humans, right? Like maybe to save humans, because biblically Noah's purpose was to save humans and animals from a great flood, right? That was kind of the purpose of the Noah biblically, right? And maybe the Sea Kings have to bring the ship to the surface and pull it, right? Maybe that's kind of their purpose. And then Poseidon's purpose is to, like, because if you destroy the Red Line, it could cause tides and it could cause a lot of flooding, and maybe the weather would be unstable. So maybe that would be Poseidon's purpose, to stabilize all that, to manipulate the tides, to stop the storms that can happen. You know what I mean? Like that, you know, and I'm just kind of, you know, that's kind of my speculation on it, right? That's my speculation on it.
discuss who exactly Davy the whale was and how they were connected to Joy Boy. And I believe this whale to be none other than the very same Davy Jones that was involved in the first ever Davy backfight. Robin told us that Davy Jones is a cursed pirate from ancient times who lives under the sea and takes all the ships and treasure that sink to the seafloor. This tells you right away that Davy could very well just be a sea creature, since he literally lives on the bottom of the seafloor. And we all should know by now that Oda does nothing but ankle breakers when it comes to pieces of lore like this. I mean, Odin didn't even think Shirahoshi would be a mermaid, and he read the damn poneglyphs. So I think we need to read between the lines a little bit when it comes to stories just like this. Plus, when we were inside of Laboon, we actually saw sunken ships and treasure at the bottom of the ocean that he had inside of him, which may be a hint to what creature Davy might be. And Oda even talked more about Davy Jones in SBS 38 and added that there was a lying, no good pirate named Davy Jones, a greedy deck chief who was famous for putting all the crew's valuables in his own locker. He was so wicked, even for a pirate, that one day the devil himself cursed Davy to live on the bottom of the sea forever, swabbing the deck of a sunken ship and placing all the sunken treasure into his own locker where it would never be seen again. Between these two explanations, we can see that Davy was indeed from ancient times, but also cursed to do something forever. Does that remind you of anyone? Like maybe Zunisha, who just happens to be a gargantuan 800-year-old elephant that was also once a companion of Joy Boy. But they were even commanded to wander the seas until Momonosuke came along. And what else did you say, Oda? Davy was cursed by the devil himself? After seeing Zunisha's situation and all the vilifying of pirates in the One Piece story, I think this devil can be nobody other than Joy Boy himself. And think about what else Oda said. He was famous for putting all the crew's valuables in his own locker. And if our entire conversation is about the One Piece being hidden inside of a whale, perhaps what this really means is that Davy was just the locker where Joy Boy and his crew stored all of their treasure. I mean, that would be a pretty safe place to hide it, right? And maybe Davy Jones was just Joy Boy's entire ship. I mean, what a better way to sail the seas than inside of a whale that protects you? It's like the reverse of the Rumbar pirates, basically. Instead of protecting Laboon, the whale could protect the crew. And I want to go ahead and give a quick shout out to my boy Dire Regulus. This man had his own Davy Jones theory that gave me all sorts of ideas for this one, so I definitely recommend that you go check him out. And his video gave me the idea that maybe the whale's name is just Davy and Joy Boy's original name is Jones, or Jonah, like in the stories of Jonah and the whale, where he gets eaten and stays there for 3 days and 3 nights. Joy Boy and Jones share the first couple letters, and Luffy's nicknames are never that far off from his real name, like Luffy, Taro, or Lushi. So I just wanted to go ahead and throw this idea out there because I thought it was interesting. But something important that Oda also mentioned was that Davy was famous. So other people probably knew about the treasure hidden inside. And this could also potentially connect back to the first ever Davy backfight, which we obviously know that Davy was a part of. And then Robin, who seems to know everything important by the way, said that the Davy backfights began on Pirates Paradise Island, which is also known as Hachinosu and was once the home base of Rocks and is now the home base of Blackbeard. This is also interesting given the slight resemblance between Afro Luffy's chest tattoo and Rock's pirate symbol. And from what we've seen,
I'm kind of shocked he never brought up Vanderdecken. I think Vanderdecken is one of those characters that get overlooked a lot, right? Like the first Vanderdecken, and I don't remember whose theory that is. I'm like forgetting. I do so many theories, I forget. But again, go back. I have a video. I think it's called "The First Joy Boy" or the first person to find the One Piece or something along. Or the first man to bend the laugh tail. It's something along that line, right? It's something like that. And I'm gonna link it in the description box. But that video talks about Vanderdecken, like the first Vanderdecken. Like we know Vanderdecken from Fishman Island. He had an ancestor that came. He was a human that came to Fishman Island looking for a treasure underwater, right? And he's talking about like a well and how like just kind of going off of what he just talked about. Why did Vanderdecken go to the what treasure in the bottom of the ocean was he looking for? Was it the One Piece? Was he looking for a whale possibly? Like did he know what he was looking for, or was it just something that he heard? There was something that took him to the bottom of the ocean, and there was a treasure that attracted him to go into the ocean, and then eventually I guess he stayed in Fishman Island, maybe procreated with some fishermen, and eventually we got Vanderdecken. But yeah, I'm gonna have to link that video, link my video in the description box or the comments, or one or the other.
So far, the common theme with Hachinosu is that bad pirates stay there. So if the Davy Back fight originated on that island, it was likely started by the bad guys who stayed there, as opposed to the good guys, which would be Joy Boy's crew. And if Davy was famous for holding all this treasure inside of him, perhaps the story goes something like this. He was stolen by the strong evil pirates, and then taken back to Hachinosu, and then Joy Boy had to go win him back by playing their probably rigged games. I mean, Davy Back fights have always been a game of human resources after all, so pirates could steal other pirate members. And just think about the name of the challenge itself, a Davy Back fight. Perhaps it was called this because the first one was a fight to get Davy back. Let me know if you like that idea down in the comments. But of course, Joy Boy probably won this fight.
I thought he was gonna say it was a fight on Davy's back. Him being a whale, so he'd be big enough where you could actually fight on him or something like.
Fair and square, just like Luffy did. And as much as everyone hates Foxy, I think this gives us a good reason to put his fight with Luffy under the magnifying glass as well. Because I believe there's even a chance that this fight is what gave rise to the Void Century. Imu seems like the type of person to have everything meticulously planned out since they've been running the show for 800 years apparently. So I could easily see them putting together some rigged games like Foxy to try and collect as many strong people to his side as possible so he could take over the world, just like Rocks and Blackbeard have tried to do. But of course, Joy Boy would have won his fight, and Imu just may have gone back on his word, which led to the Void Century in the first place. And whether that part is true or not, the Void Century did eventually happen, and Joy Boy had to leave his treasure somewhere. So where else would he have left it other than his own private treasure chest inside Davy Jones? Or in other words, he hid the One Piece inside Davy Jones' locker. And if Davy truly was commanded to go scoop up ships and treasure on the seafloor all this time until Joy Boy came back, then the treasure at Laugh Tale is probably immense at this point, truly worthy of the great pirate era that Roger set forth in the past. And this same Davy Jones would be over 800 years old at this point. And if Zunisha is any comparison, Davy has to be massive. We also can't rule out that Joy Boy stretched either of these two with his awakening, so imagination is truly the limit on their size. And if Joy Boy could command it to collect treasure, maybe he could leave behind other instructions as well, like showing up to a certain place once a year, or maybe only allowing certain people inside who meet certain conditions that they learn from the poneglyphs. Or maybe just like Zunisha, it knows that only a certain someone.
You know something? I just had a thought. It's a little off topic, but I just had a thought that just crossed my mind. Talking about commanding Zunisha, right? Like we know Joy Boy possibly commanded Zunisha, right? And like that was Joy Boy's companion, and Zunisha listened to Joy Boy. But we also kind of, I want to say it was implied that Joy Boy listens to the Koski clan, right? Because he listens to Momonosuke. He takes orders from Momonosuke. Momonosuke says do something, he does it. So would this mean that Joy Boy was a Koski? I don't know. Dang, that's just been racking my brain. Like it was racking my brain. I had to get that out. You know, like could Joy Boy have possibly been a Koski, like the first Koski, or like a predecessor to the Koski, right? Like maybe he wasn't a Koski, but maybe he was like a predecessor to what eventually became the Koski clan, you know. Ah, man.
can command it, and perhaps the One Piece is what's required to do so. But where exactly would this whale be located? Well, how about right under our old friend, Long Ring Longland? And speaking of our friend, it's time to show you what is maybe one of Oda's biggest hints towards Laugh Tale to date, which is the color page for chapter 471, titled My Friend. Notice how peculiar this scene is. The whole crew is underwater with
the whale with the crown. I see where he's going.
some various fish swimming around, but at the top is an absolutely massive whale with a crown on its head. I know it's just a color page, but Oda has foreshadowed things from these before, and the title My Friend surely isn't doing any favors in hiding it. And now that we know an ancient weapon has been under the entire Wano country for 800 years, I just can't rule out the chance that a whale has been waiting for Joy Boy under Long Ring Longland for 800 years either. Imagine if that whale's crown was the size of Long Ring Longland itself. That might even give you an idea of just how big Davy Jones really could be. So maybe during Agua Laguna, you can access the whale via Long Ring Longland and then find Laugh Tale and thus the One Piece. Another option could just be,
You know what I just thought? What if it? Let's going off this theory that the whale is under Long Ring Longland, right? What if let's say it is a huge whale? It is indeed a huge whale, right? What if Aqua Laguna is caused by this whale? You know, like he's so big when he let, you know how they let their water, they got them little, I don't know what you call them. It's like the little holes in their back, but they suppose they could like spray water out of it. What if he's so big that when he does that, that's what causes Aqua Laguna? He does that like once a year at the same time or something. Just I don't know. I just had to throw that out there. I had to put that out there.
be that the whale could be hiding all year but is summoned to the surface via some certain instructions, probably involving playing DaksSake. And we actually saw something just like this yet again in chapter 304 when we first got the Long Ring Longland. Oda really packed that chapter tight, I'm telling you. He included a 4-page non-canon story where the crew summons a series of rainbow eels that are all wearing straw hats. Luffy even mentioned trying to summon a whale before these eels surfaced, potentially hinting that the whale can be summoned with the right song as well, and maybe the poneglyphs include these instructions. Both of these are good options, but I'm leaning toward the whale just being right under Long Ring Longland like Pluton is under Wano, and it's just waiting to be moved for its final purpose. Both of these options would be a good way to not only keep Laugh Tale hidden, but also make sure that a crew who has actually read the poneglyphs would be the only ones to access the final island. And it may also explain why Roger's crew was singing this song on their way to Laugh Tale in his flashback. Regardless of whether Laugh Tale is inside a whale or not, we still have to answer one question though. If Roger had all of this proper information and even made it to Laugh Tale himself, what stopped him from going even further? Why was he too early? And why did Rayleigh say that the Straw Hats may come to a different conclusion than they did? Oda has told us that the One Piece is a physical object, so what could be so funny that the entire crew of the King of the Pirates laughed so hard that they cried? Basically what I'm asking is, what is the One Piece? Well, I think it's the one piece of something that can make the world one piece again. It's the ultimate treasure of Joy Boy, the sign of strength and friendship that can persevere even after you're nothing but bones. And it's the only sign that lets Davy the Whale know that Joy Boy has finally made his way back. I believe that the One Piece is an Afro. But not just any Afro, mind you, Joy Boy's Afro. It's the sign of strength, the sign of friendship, and the sign of the world as it's supposed to be. Even as recently as chapter 1060, Brook referenced how the swirling
An Afro. I mean, I'm gonna let him talk with it. That one's more odd than Saki. Because at least Saki makes sense, but an Afro. Let's go.
eddy looks just like an afro, and the eddy was just a swirling ball of water which resembles the entire planet, an entire planet without borders. The treasure is the one piece of hair that resembles the world as one piece, one without barriers like the red line that splits the world in two. A world split in two would be two-piece. And what did Luffy call Foxy during their final fight? Two-piece head. Think about that again. Two-piece. If Foxy's split hair made him two-piece head to Luffy, would that make Luffy the one-piece head? You may think this is a joke, but think again about all the other connections I've laid out between Joy Boy and Long Ring Longland. Think about the fact that the One Piece made Roger laugh so hard that he cried. The final fight of this arc may have been a joke in our eyes, but the real joke may be how much Oda hid from us in plain sight. And is it a coincidence that Brook was also found in the same pose as Sun God Nika? The times we've seen this pose, particularly in front of the moon, have been so insanely important that I think we'd just be foolish to ignore it. Brook is also so happy and cheerful, and he uses his music to put smiles on the faces of those around him. Does that not sound like something that Nika would do? This could even explain why Luffy wanted a musician.
He making me think that Brook might be Joy Boy if we if we being serious. Hell, Brook could be Joy Boy. He could have been like a previous Joy Boy who died, but you know how I kind of say Joy Boy could have existed in different times, right? Like, but you have failed Joy Boys. Maybe Brook was maybe I was wrong about Roger being the previous Joy Boy, and it was really Brook that was the previous one. But when he died, he ended up coming back to life, you know. So he kind of cheated. But maybe the will of Joy Boy passed on to Luffy. I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of spitballing on that right there. But yeah.
First and foremost, based off the importance of Bink Sake, I feel like Joy Boy himself was probably a musician, or at the very least he was in a crew like the Rumbar Pirates that sang that song to their heart's content. Like I said, Brook's laugh is in the song. We were even told that afros give you power on two separate occasions by Usopp and Sanji. Usopp has basically been proven to be a prophet at this point by having all of his lies come true, and Sanji knows plenty of things that he tends to keep under wraps. Perhaps there is actually something more to the afro than meets the eye. I mean, the afro is technically the reason that Luffy won that fight, because a piece of mirror got stuck inside of it, and this is how Luffy reflected a slow beam back at Foxy. And think about the other afros that we've seen in the story. One is Sengoku, who has a Buddha fruit, and his afro gets beefier and more textured when in his Buddha form. This is more interesting when you consider the fact he's another mythical Hito user. And another example would actually be Gaimon, who is literally a man stuck in a treasure chest with an afro that is stuck on an island with a bunch of empty treasure chests. It's as if the only treasure on that island at all is the afro itself. Shout out to Matt Cypher on Discord for bringing some of these points up, man. I mean, Oda would probably send a cease and desist if he could, because of how many of his secrets get revealed in our discussions. So shout out to him. And also shout out to Rabbithead14 for being an original Afro Gang member and also posting that Sun God Brook panel the other night. But let's get back on track, because we also have to consider the fact that an afro undoubtedly checks the box for something that would make the entire Roger pirate crew laugh. I mean, think about it. You travel the seas for decades, fighting powerful pirate crews and enemy marines, all to find an afro that has been left in pristine condition for...
Yeah, that would be wild. It's like, damn. Did I travel the seas for a freaking afro? What? Afro? I don't know, like... I don't know, man. Afro being that'll be wild if this is true. That'll be wild.
Centuries that can somehow supposedly turn the entire world on its head. I'd probably want to live in that guy's era too. I mean, imagine if they finally arrive, walk up to the One Piece, and it's just a grave with an afro at the top. And what's kind of funny about this is that's exactly what Brook's crew's gravesite looks like on Thriller Bark. It's a big stone cross with a skull at the top that has a giant afro made of wood. After all the ties that I have mentioned between music, this dang afro, and Joy Boy, Can you even rule out that this grave is just a lesser version of what we're gonna get at Laugh Tale? The skull even has horns, which could be a tie to Oars and a hint that he may have been Joy Boy. And if that sounds crazy to you, well, Wizard of Oars has actually covered this in great detail over on the Marshall D. Preach channel, so I definitely recommend you go check that out. It's a theory that has come to grow on me more and more over the years. But as for the Afro, it has to be the one thing that Joy Boy knew he couldn't lose. It was his treasure that he had to protect no matter the cost, just like Brooke. If the Afro is damaged, his dream can never become true, because Joy Boy knew that at some point he would return in the future and his Afro would be needed to let Davy know that he has returned. Without that, Davy could never be used for his final purpose. And maybe the reason Roger was unable to do this himself was because Joy Boy has to wear it specifically, meaning you not only need the Afro, but to use it while in Gear 5th, which we already know is a sign that Joy Boy has returned thanks to Zunisha. So let's get back to the idea that Joy Boy's story could be Brooke's story, but just on an entirely new level. Perhaps he was close friends with a whale in the past, died at some point, but knew he would come back in the future, potentially just in the form of Will or through the devil fruit, and the only way for Davy to recognize Joy Boy again was with his Afro, just like Brooke. And in the event that the One Piece did fall into the wrong hands, Joy Boy probably added Gear 5th into the mix so that only somebody with his will could command Davy. By combining these factors, he knew that only the right...
I'm actually, I kind of like the idea that Brooke is almost a mirror of Joy Boy. I kind of like that idea, you know, because it would explain why Oda had to put that one panel where Brooke had that Joy Boy pose, like where he jumped into the air and he had the moon behind him. And it's like, why would Oda do that for Brooke? You know what I'm saying? Brooke also has a lot of ties to like some history and stuff. And, you know, I think some people have made points that these whales can kind of point to Laugh Tale as well. So, you know, there could be more to Brooke, right? You know, maybe he has a connection to Joy Boy, kind of being like, maybe not like he is Joy Boy or anything, but his life kind of mirrored Joy Boy to a degree. You know, I'm not against that. I kind of like that idea.
Person would be able to use Davy for his final purpose. But what is that purpose? Why would someone want to command Davy, and what did Joy Boy have planned for the future that would enable this whale to turn the entire world on its head? Well, let's just take a look at all the other island whales that we've seen thus far and consider that they have one thing in common. They want to destroy the Red Line. And they like being sake too. The Red Line is obviously unnatural to them, and they all are trying to get rid of it. Laboon has tried for years, but is too small, and we even see other ones in the New World with the same scars. But what if we had a whale that was several magnitudes bigger than the one we've seen thus far? One that could maybe be comparable to Zunisha, and one that could be commanded by Joy Boy himself. So yes, I believe that the One Piece is an Afro that Luffy needs to wear for the whale to recognize him and be commanded.
So in that aspect, right? Because I've had arguments with people when I say I think the ancient weapons, their purpose might be to destroy the Red Line, and I talked about Pluton, and a lot of people would say, well, I don't think Pluton would be big enough to destroy Red Line. The Red Line is a very big, structure. You know, it might be too big for like a ship. Even if you had a big ship, it still might be too big. So could a humongous whale be, you know, one that's bigger than all the other whales that we've seen? And we've seen some big whales. They're pretty big, right? Like these whales are already bigger than most ships. You know what I'm saying? Like we seen Laboon, he was bigger than the Going Merry. You know, his eye alone was bigger than the whole Going Merry, right? So I would assume it's also bigger than the Sunny as well. So if you had a whale that's even bigger than that, that's way bigger than that, it could be big enough to destroy the Red Line. It could be, you know, and if Luffy was to be able to command it, and I mean, now I'm actually kind of being sold on this Afro. God dang. Like, at first I was a little iffy on it, but now I'm actually kind of being sold on this Afro theory. If Joy Boy had this Afro and like back in the days, and then he left his Afro, and then Luffy wore the Afro, and then Joy Boy or the whale, right? This Davy or whatever, he was able to recognize Luffy and say, okay, yes, you are a Joy Boy. Command me. And then Luffy could be like, hey, destroy the red line. That could be the way. Man, I would never thought I would actually kind of be on board with the Afro One Piece theory.
Much like Zunisha, so that it can go and destroy the red line. And speaking of Zunisha, just think about their purpose, which is literally to destroy the borders of Wano by Momo's command specifically. Maybe Davy's purpose is to destroy the borders of the entire world, the red line, and make the world one piece again, just like the Afro of Joy Boy. I mean, think about Luffy's whole meeting with Laboon now that we've covered all of this. On literally day 0 of Luffy's journey into the Grand Line, he stopped Laboon from trying to destroy the Red Line and basically told him to wait until he gets back from the end of his journey. Brook basically did the same thing and even had to come back to life to do it. I mean, technically Luffy did the same thing. It's almost as if they won't be back until they're powerful enough to fulfill Laboon's wish and destroy that god-forsaken red line, to make the world one piece again as it's supposed to be. And even if you don't agree with any of my conclusions, I hope that I opened your mind a little bit and taught you something that you didn't know before. And if you have something to add, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. And please consider dropping a like because it really helps your boy out. And you should also subscribe because I'm finally starting up live reactions and also working on some other exciting stuff behind the scenes. So in the
Hey y'all, shout out to DaksSake. I'm gonna give it a like and I'm gonna subscribe because I really enjoyed that theory. I really enjoyed that theory. That was indeed a great theory. It was a very well done theory. Dang. Makes you think, man, but could it be an Afro? Like when he first said Afro, I really wasn't. I was a little hesitant. I'm like, Afro? What? What? But the whole explanation of like kind of mirroring Brook, right? Because I already established the connection with Brook and Joy Boy potentially, or at least Sun God Nika, because we know the Sun God Nika pose when he's jumping into the air with the moon behind him, and you just see the silhouette, and he has that pose. And then we know Luffy, you know, he had his signature Nika pose. Brook had a signature Nika pose. Like Brook, of all people, Brook, you know what I'm saying? And you can almost look at Brook similar to Joy Boy as well in some ways. Just the signature Nika pose. The fact that he plays music and brings people joy, you know that's for one. You can even say, and this is kind of just something I just kind of came up with just now. Back in Thriller Bark, right, when Brook was introduced, we know that there was a bunch of people who had their shadows taken from Gecko Moria. What did Brook do? What did he help do? He helped liberate some of those people by freeing their shadows from these zombies when he had salt. Like he was putting the salt in the zombies' mouths, and he was freeing their shadows to go back to the original people, so they're not like, because those people were like kind of like prisoners. They were prisoners. They couldn't go into the sun or they'll die. So if you think about it, Brook was liberating people. Similar to Joy Boy as well, right? You know, so there is some connection with Joy Boy and Brook and Luffy. You know what I'm saying? I'm just kind of saying. So we know Brook's relationship with Laboon. You know, so if because because he did kind of make some points to point that, yes, Laugh-Tale could be inside of a giant well, right? And we know that Brooke also has a relationship with a giant well, right? So one thing we know about Brooke is the most important treasure to him was his afro, because it was like, if I have my afro, Laboon will remember who I am once he's seen my afro. So since there's all these mirrors and connection with Joy Boy and Brooke, what if Joy Boy did have an afro? You know, and he also made a good point to connect Long Longland Island with the potential One Piece and Laugh-Tale, right? That was the arc where we see Luffy with the freaking afro fighting Davy Beck. So is it that much of a stretch? I mean, look, I don't know if I'm 100% behind the idea of the One Piece being an afro, but he made some valid points that I can't overlook, you know. So I'm not against the theory. I'm not against the theory. You know, the more I think about it, the more the theory actually grows on me. So, you know, I like the theory. I thought his theory was very well thought out, and I really enjoyed reacting to it. So, yeah. But you guys, let me know your thoughts on this video that we reacted to. Let me know what you thought of the reaction. But yeah, make sure you guys hit that like button. Also, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. In the comments, let me know your thoughts on the theory and my reaction, like I just said. Follow me on Twitch so you can catch my live streams live and you could engage with me in real time. Also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And make sure you join the Discord. Make sure you join the Discord and come be a part of my community. All of these will be in the description box below, as well as the video that we just watched. But yeah, y'all, it's your boy, Sean P. the Bluff God, and I'm out of here. Peace.